Hi there. My name is Patrick Chase, co-founder of Empire Space. I want to thank you for joining us for this video of a virtual town hall that we hosted on May 1st, 2025, as part of our Space Week New York program. During this video, you're going to learn more about us as an organization, the New York space ecosystem, and all the jobs, economic activity, and academic opportunity it generates in New York every single year, as well as our vision for what this ecosystem can be in the future, as well as a discussion with many of the different space sector stakeholders that joined us for Space Week. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to visit empirespace.org to learn more. Thank you.
We will obviously talk about Space Week New York. We're in Space Week New York. There's so much to say, so we'll try not to say too much about it. But it'll be mentioned. There's the census. This is one of our key projects at Empire Space. So we'll mention that and talk a bit about where we've gone with the census at Empire Space. The needs assessment is another key project for us. This was in collaboration with the New York Consortium for Space Technology. If you're wondering what that is, we will also talk about that. But this is a big project for us at Empire Space. This is ongoing. So some very exciting results to be released soon, in addition to those that have already come out. There will be a topic about the New York space ecosystem, talking about what we know about it, some of our big takeaways from the research and analysis that we've done. And then we'll start looking forward, asking really important questions and having some key conversations about the future and the vision for New York space. Then we'll close it up. There'll be an open discussion. Any questions that you have, please save for that portion. There'll be an open Q&A where we're able to engage with each other and with us. So to get into Empire Space, just for a bit about us as an organization, we at least see ourselves as a research and networking hub for the New York space ecosystem. We have our census. We'll talk more about this on a later slide, but this is a database that we've built that has over 1,500 unique entries. This is for the different organizations, institutions, facilities all across New York State that are doing something in space. This is on our website, empirespace.org/data. We're also a member of two consortia. These are key consortium for us. One of those being the NASA New York Space Grant, the other one being the New York Consortium for Space Technology. These are both based out of Cornell. We do some of our most important projects as a part of these consortium. NASA New York Space Grant was the sponsor for our New York Space Forum on Tuesday, the big conference style event that we held on Tuesday as part of Space Week this week. So these are really critical communities and organizations for us at Empire Space, and we're doing a lot of work as a part of them. I've mentioned the census a few times already. This is a database of ours. We do some really important analysis as a part of this. So we write reports out of that, and then we also do additional data and research. So we're conducting surveys, asking key questions to members of this ecosystem, and then we're generating projects like the needs assessment for the takeaways from all of that data. We host events, networking events. We're here at Space Week. This is one of our bigger ones, but we also have events throughout the year focused on building connectivity, fostering innovation, really engaging and bringing together the community to do some incredible things. And then we're always engaging with members of our community. People are always reaching out, asking questions. We're always trying to make new connections, provide insights, and help our stakeholders and our community members take full advantage of and really thrive in New York as a space organization. This is some of our team. Our team is actually quite a bit larger than this. But just to speak to a few of the key players here, there's obviously Pat and I, the co-founders of the organization. Pat's based upstate in Rochester, New York. He covers sort of the upstate portion for us at Empire Space. His background's in government communications and constituent services. I'm downstate in the city. My background is more technical. Went to school for aerospace engineering. I've been in the space industry my whole career, sort of spanning from engineering over to the business side. So between Pat and I, we handle sort of on the technical side for me, and then like the legislative side for him. We have Quadri, also down here in the city. He's our programming manager, also technical. And then we have Mike Cassandra. He's a board member for us, but he's been super engaged, super helpful. Also based in the city. His background is in human resources and culture, but he does quite a bit more than that for us. He's been super useful. Some more of the team, but still not all of them. These are a few of our advisors: Steve Wolf, Mike Spaeth, and Bobby Davison. And then also some key staff for us: Mike Oros, our social media manager; Dennis Malazzo, he does research on the legislative side; and then Ayesha, also does research for us out of our census, writes a lot of the key reports that we put up on our website. And she's been with us for several years now, contributing a ton of great work. Also have to mention, if you're interested in joining our organization as an intern or otherwise, we're always looking to bring on great people. So you can reach us at info@empirespace.org or find us anywhere else, LinkedIn, whatever. Let us know that you'd like to join the team. We'd love to talk. For a bit on Space Week New York. So, every year Space Week New York has grown and has, a slightly different focus, let's say. But this year, we're focusing a lot on the vision and a lot of forward-looking kinds of questions and topics. We're trying to understand how we can make New York space ecosystem have more of a vision, and then, with that vision, greater connectivity, and then sort of create a thriving ecosystem. We see Space Week as an opportunity to deepen these connections, as we identify issues as a community, solve those, and then also as a community tell the story of New York space. So we see this as a way to bring together the community to solve these kinds of problems and create these, you could say. Some key questions that we're asking and thinking about this Space Week is around the marketing of New York in this space economy. What specialties or focus areas New York should have in space? What capacities would help companies and organizations and the ecosystem here grow? And then also, if any events or what events would be most beneficial during Space Week or otherwise. To talk a bit more about the growth that I've been mentioning, this is our third annual Space Week or Space Day. In 2023, we started this as Space Day New York. We had, during that one day, over 100 participants, 5 events. This was entirely virtual, but very engaging. We brought in over a dozen organizations. And I think we had some great traction, great feedback, encouraged us to do it again the following year, 2024, last year, where we did it for a full week. We had over 200 participants, so there was a lot of growth there. We had in-person events and virtual events. So we really sort of expanded it and expanded how we were engaging and bringing people together to engage. And then that brings us to this year, 2025. So far, I think we're looking at about 800 participants over this week of programming, mixed between in-person and virtual. This was our first significant in-person programming. We had in-person events almost every day, with the exception of today for the town hall. Tuesday, we had a day-long event, the New York Space Forum, which was a conference-style event. We had 4 panels across very interesting topics: insurance, space medicine, leadership and opportunity, and space law, and then some great breakout sessions and other ways to really bring together the community and get people really engaged. And some great feedback already on that forum, as well as many other great events that we'll mention. We should also say we have a YouTube channel. There's a lot of other events. The forum has recordings; those aren't up yet, but we've had many virtual events and interviews. Those are already up on our YouTube channel that's linked here. So please visit our YouTube, watch these recordings. If there's anything that you missed that you want to see, it should be up on that YouTube soon. So please check out the YouTube channel if you want to watch anything. This is our full calendar for Space Week this year. I've already talked about some of this, but to cover at least the things that I've missed, we kicked off at Luxembourg House. It's always great to collaborate with LTIO and LACC and the people at Luxembourg House. It was a great event, a fantastic way to start the week. We had the New York Space Forum at Cornell ILR in Midtown. This was sponsored by NASA New York Space Grant, as I mentioned. A fantastic event, the first of its kind for us at Empire Space, and some great feedback. We're looking forward to doing this again next year, hopefully bigger and better. Yesterday, Wednesday, we did an event with Axiom and AWS, a bit different than the other events, brought in a very interesting community, some new members into our community, and I guess some really engaging conversations. So that was great. We've had spotlight interviews throughout yesterday and today, some fantastic conversations with key space companies in New York that sort of build the brand and are at the forefront of space technology and are really representing New York in space in various ways. So these were fantastic ways to sort of get an insight into what's happening here in New York space. Encourage you to check those out on the YouTube channel if you're interested. Brings us to today. We are here at the town hall. Prior to this, we had the space policy briefing from Pat, talking about insights and sort of how to engage and get the legislative or our legislators more engaged in New York space. We had with SSPI Wise, Women's Future in Space, It was a talk on future in space, and we also had the New York Planetarium Forum, where we brought together some key members of the planetarium community to have a conversation that we haven't had previously. So this was a great way and really some great engagement for a key community. Hopefully some great events come out of that. That's everything that's happened so far, which has been a lot. And we still have one more thing tomorrow. We are closing it up with a townhouse party at Ivan's. It should be a lot of fun. We're really looking forward to this. I think that event is closed at this point. I think we're at capacity, but it's going to be a great time. So if you're planning to come, you're registered to come. We're really looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Should be fun. Some other events outside of Space Week. I'm going to do these from bottom to top if you're reading with me. Sorry. So most recently, we, at the end of the Drone and Robotics AI Summit, we had a reception in partnership with the New York Robotics Network and Genius New York. This was a great event to really bring together the space and aerospace community and the robotics community. Brought in some new members to our community, and was just a lot of fun. And that summit was a great time as well. Prior to that, at New Lab, we did the Spaceships and Space Chips Happy Hour. This was in partnership with AI and Alumni Ventures. A lot of fun, a great space, always great to be at New Lab. We had a holiday party at Ivan's. This was the first time we brought sort of a larger space community into Ivan's townhouse. Very well received, which brings us to tomorrow. So this will be by far the biggest space gathering we've had at Ivan's, and we're very excited. In partnership with Antler and 615 VC, we did a happy hour back in October. And then also there was the NYCST Symposium in Ithaca back in June, where we presented the phase 1 of our needs assessment. I will be talking more about the needs assessment in a little bit. To highlight the census, briefly, we've already talked about this a bit. This was our first project at Empire Space, really, several years ago. We came together really to answer the key question of what exists in New York space. We could not find that answer easily. We spent a year researching all the different organizations and people and things that are space or space-y in New York. We found like 1,000 of these, realized that we had to make a proper database to capture this, and then we put that up on our website. Now it's interactive. We have a map. It's broken into categories. There are tables that you're able to filter and sort. So you're really able to engage with this data, make a lot of sense of it. Hopefully this is super useful to people. So far, we think it has been. If you don't like engaging with data yourself, we also have our own analysis, our own reports. We've done a ton of these based on that data with key findings and takeaways. So if you'd rather read that analysis, we also have that on our website under the report section. So we encourage you to engage, check out the census, check out the reports. There's a lot of very interesting stuff there. If you have any questions, let us know. We're always happy to help. I'm going to pass it over to Pat to talk about the needs assessment, some other key projects, looking forward and the future.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Evan, for that excellent introduction. I would just echo him and thanking everyone who has joined us throughout the week and who is here with us tonight. It's been a resounding success. All of these events, a very diverse flavor of events, all sorts of different forums, different audiences, different structures. It's been really engaging. The reception has been really positive. There's a lot of momentum, a lot of excitement. People are making new connections. And we're just incredibly thankful because as I said Tuesday at the in-person forum, none of this is possible without all of you and your participation, your interest, the work that you do day to day in the space ecosystem. So just thank you for that. So one of the biggest things that we've been working on for the last year plus now, this is an outgrowth of our work with the New York Consortium for Space Technology, is our needs assessment. This has quickly become one of the most significant projects we have worked on and will probably be one of the defining projects that will shape our next couple of years. So this is a comprehensive assessment of all of the space companies that we have identified in our census. There's more than 340 in our census, working in all sorts of different categories: large, small, upstate, downstate, new, old, dozens of different specialties. And we know that this group struggles with various workforce challenges, financing challenges, research and testing challenges. We've known that those barriers existed. But all of the specificity either didn't exist or was gathered anecdotally. So we partnered, we built a survey in SurveyMonkey. Phase 1 was last year. We had a test group. We kind of ran it out. How did people think? Did it capture the data we wanted it to do? And then we expanded it to the full
universe, and we are in the process of collecting that data right now. It's incredibly comprehensive. It covers all sorts of different subsects of how these businesses identify themselves, how they structure themselves, their priorities, their needs, their challenges. And the benefit of this is it allows us to be much more specific and granular in recommendations or programming approaches, rather than saying companies are struggling with workforce needs, which, yes, okay, cool. What do we do about that amorphous topic? If you have data that says companies that work in these specialties are struggling with two-year technical talent that can, operate in these specialties, that then can become a policy recommendation or a conversation with an academic institution when you have that detailed layer of data informed by the companies themselves. So that's been something we've been building for a while. We're hoping to have a final data set published with a complete white paper sometime this summer. And that will inform a lot of the conversations that we will be having moving forward. And then at some point, we hope to run out a similar format to other sectors. College programs want to design a survey that attaches to their needs, their concerns, what are their challenges, their barriers. With a lot of the community groups, the planetariums and observatories, they serve a vital function, but they have their own unique set of challenges. We discovered that in the planetarium forum today. There are technical challenges, there are funding challenges, there are engagement challenges. So designing these surveys so that all the stakeholders are understood at a much more granular level will just allow us to better serve that community, to advocate for them, and to design the specific programs or new supports that we need to advocate for to allow that growth to take off. So this is one of our favorite graphics. If you've ever been to one of our presentations before, especially at Town Hall, you've seen this before. This is kind of how we conceptualize the New York space ecosystem, its strengths, its weaknesses, how they interact with each other, and how that kind of shapes our core purpose. So New York does have a lot of strengths in the space ecosystem due to Wall Street and being the financial capital of the world. In a number of different metrics, we are a space finance powerhouse. There's a lot of assets, vehicles, companies that work in space finance that have some kind of presence here in New York that is unique to us. Most other states don't have that. We do have the statewide civic network. There are lots of engaging community-based groups in all corners of the state. They can serve a really important function as hubs for companies, academia, and government leaders to come together and problem solve. We have an academic and research infrastructure. Our census database has dozens of universities, more than 300 unique resources between degree programs and student groups and on-campus facilities and aerospace, core space, all sorts of different specialties. So there's some really top-notch collegiate and K through 12 programming in the state. And we do have a baseline NASA presence. A significant number of New York space companies do have NASA contracts to varying degrees of their total portfolio. And we do have a NASA facility in the state. So those are the high points. We do have lots of strengths here. We think it's important to highlight those, but there are barriers and challenges. A lot of the finance that flows through institutions here in New York usually winds up investing in companies located outside of New York. There are gaps in connectivity and environments. A lot of stakeholders. When we first built the census, we started going around and meeting people. And introducing ourselves to stakeholders and saying, hey, here's what we've discovered about New York and space. We would love to learn more about you and what you're doing and how we can help. And by far, but especially in the early couple of years, the most common response was, I had no idea, or we had no idea. So that lack of self-awareness, companies and organizations not being aware that there are potential partners in close proximity who have resources or talents or knowledge or programs that may be beneficial to their operation. That also speaks to that kind of clusters and fragmentation. So it was just a very kind of segmented ecosystem when we first started to get our minds around it, 2 to 3 years ago. And that leads us to the area of capacity building. These gaps lead to caps on economic growth in terms of workforce, in terms of finance, in terms of research capabilities. So there are these ceilings that companies keep bumping into, and we've discovered this. We have a number of different examples over the years of companies, space companies that existed in New York, who relocated to other states, and oftentimes these were startups who someone had a great idea and it sprang up around an incubator or an accelerator, often down in the city. New Lab does some fantastic work. And so the idea took root here, but then they tried to scale and they couldn't find either the talent or the research and testing capabilities or the partners to really grow their operation. And so they relocated out of state. And that's just a tremendous loss for New York. That's a loss of jobs. That's a loss of academic opportunities, tax revenue, economic activity. The secondary and tertiary benefits from having a space company operating in your state are significant. So that's the graphic that you see there, the fragmentation. We have these successful parts, but they're not networked together properly in feeding into the private sector in a way that is fostering significant growth. So that's kind of why we exist, to kind of solve that problem, to close these dotted lines, to make all the circles, connect to each other and really activate the space economy here. So the legacy, we are going to touch on the history because we think it's important for people to kind of recognize this story, that we have been a player in space since the beginning. We were early leaders in aviation that led us to being early leaders in aerospace, which led us to being, home for the construction of parts of the Apollo lunar landers. They're still to this day on some of the landing structures that were left behind when they blasted back off to return to Earth. Somewhere buried in the innards of all of those landers, there's a plaque in there that says "Made in New York," and we think that's insanely cool. We think that's also underappreciated. We think most New Yorkers don't know that. And it just contributes to the lack of self-awareness that the space ecosystem has here, both within itself and among the general public. Over the decades, a lot of specialty areas have developed. I'm a native, as Evan mentioned, of Rochester, upstate in the Finger Lakes region. We're a huge hub for optics. It's a legacy of Kodak. So most major NASA telescopes, Nancy Grace Roman, which is about to launch soon, Hubble, Webb, most of them at some point, the optics or some of their components came to Rochester for refining or processing. So Rochester in the Finger Lakes region is a global leader in space optics. And there are private companies that feed into that specialty in Rochester. In Buffalo, you have Moog, you have some nanotech specialties. Long Island has a huge aerospace manufacturing network. So there are lots of different specialties that have kind of evolved. And one of the points of this week was to start really kind of grasping, what is New York good at in space? What are we national and international leaders at in space? So that we can better identify, better support and market those specialties to other players, other markets in other places. This is always a point to highlight that dozens of New Yorkers have become astronauts. We have private astronauts. We have a whole host of NASA astronauts, some of whom are still traveling up until just recent. So that is another contribution that is always worth highlighting. People who made that incredibly risky journey to venture into the final frontier and call New York home. And just to touch on again the key academic hubs, Cornell University that we've partnered with extensively. A number of their researchers have had their hands in almost every mission that has ever gone to Mars. Columbia University down in New York City does a lot of great programming. In Rochester, University of Rochester, RIT. There was a number of great colleges we had on earlier with planetariums. So those academic hubs really are a strength and have been a strength for a number of years here. So this is kind of a visualization of the space companies that are active statewide. The chart on the left is just the total number of companies by region. You have a region there on the x-axis, and then the one on the right is employment by region. So they're not exactly synchronous. Western New York has a smaller number of companies, but largely because of Moog, has a tremendous employment impact. But you can see some of the regionalization there. Long Island, New York City, Western New York, Southern Tier, and the Finger Lakes really stand out in terms of their prominence here. But it does exist everywhere. There are companies creating jobs, creating revenue, creating an economic impact in every corner of the state. And the total employment of these companies is more than 70,000, which is not an insignificant number when it comes to the size and scope of New York's total economy. So again, we had touched on this at the beginning, but NASA's New York footprint, the Goddard Institute for Space Studies at Columbia University in New York City is a key facility for climate and atmospheric research. Of the companies that we've mentioned, we track at least 84 that have direct contracts with NASA. These companies collectively employ more than 20,000. 64 companies employing more than 18,000 have direct contracts on the Artemis moon mission, which is another key anchor and economic driver. A lot of those are aerospace manufacturers who are somewhere in the supply chain for Artemis. But it is unfortunate but important to note that increasing uncertainty has kind of clouded the potential impact in the future, whether or not these investments, these contracts, NASA will always still be there and there will always be contracts, but there's greater uncertainty these days about the stability and form of some of these federal or NASA related contracts or business opportunities or resources, funding, grants, etc. And that's just something to be aware of. That's something that the New York space sector needs to be cognizant of, especially private companies, especially small companies that might already be operating on the edge. So it's a dynamic that stakeholders need to be aware of. And if anything else, it's an even stronger motivation for New York to adopt a more robust vision and capacity to support our own space economy here. So just to kind of recap, highlights. The space ecosystem here is statewide. It's all the way at Watertown, Binghamton, Buffalo, Albany, lots of small towns in between. This is tens of thousands of jobs, thousands of academic opportunities, creating an impact every single day in communities across the state. And we think that this impact is underappreciated. It's not fully understood within the community itself, and most certainly among the general public, and then policymakers and community leaders. Regional economic development actors can't make decisions that are beneficial for their regional space economy if they don't know it exists. And so that's a key avenue that we focus on, is that informational awareness, networking, and engagement with those non-space actors who still in their capacities have an impact on the space economy. But because New York has this foundation, we have these great resources, we have this legacy, we have all of these great parts. It's mostly just about fitting them together properly. By NASA's economic rankings, depending on how you slice it and what metric you use, New York is roughly the 15th or 16th largest space economy of all the 50 states. So, we're not Florida, Texas, or California, but we're not bottom of the barrel. There is a lot of activity here, and we have the resources that if they were properly marshaled, we could move into the top 10. The potential for that kind of growth is there if things are properly mobilized, if we address the capacity concerns, if we network people in a way where they're maximizing partnerships and available resources. And everyone has a role to play in this. Whatever corner of the space ecosystem you inhabit, you're a vital part of growing this moving forward. A lot of people outside of the space ecosystem don't realize the part that they have to play in helping it grow, which is part of the story that we need to tell. And the return on investment, depending on whatever metric you use, NASA puts out all these studies, investing in the space economy always brings returns. There are secondary businesses tertiary businesses, the academic opportunities, the growth in STEM programming, all of this generates more prosperity in the future than the initial investment. Space is already one of the defining economies of the 21st century. It's only going to become more prominent as time goes on. And New York is on the edge. We will likely receive these benefits regardless. It's unlikely that, no impacts would ever happen. But if we really want to maximize our potential for growth and prosperity in this economy, we have to want it. We have to act on it. And so that's kind of what the story so far has told us. So now it turns to that question, and Evan had discussed it quite well in his earlier sections, but how to market New York in the 21st century space age. And this is a question that kind of goes back on to all of you as stakeholders, because you have a role in defining what this looked like. Are we defined by our academic and research hubs? Is that the key attractor or one of the key attractors? If so, how do we position that? What markets do we need to be pitching that network to in order to draw in new businesses who say might want to grow off of those resources? We have those specialty areas: optics, data analysis, precision manufacturing. We need to work on harmonizing those specialties with the right academic resources. Just an offhand example, again, from Rochester. In our optics legacy, Monroe Community College, as the local community college in Metro Rochester, has an optics training program. We spoke with a professor who runs that last year. She saw a need, she developed it. It's usually well attended. Every year she has 20 or 30 students. But during our meeting, she said the companies around us who ask her to network with her students, the companies are demanding hundreds, if not thousands, of students. So we need to better align the academic resources to support these core specialties. There's the finance sector and that kind of connectivity. We need to do better at tying Wall Street and the financial sector in with New York-based space companies and institutions to demonstrate to them that there is a market here worth investing in. So those companies can kind of make their pitch and tell that story. But figuring out, because that's a unique resource. There's only one Wall Street, and it only exists here. So figuring out how to best integrate that into the statewide space ecosystem is a key question for us internally, because that is one of the things that will inevitably be part of however we market ourselves to anyone else. And then a lot of New York, it's the acceleration and the benefit in leadership in the services, law, management and consulting, marketing. We have all of these existing specialties that might not be in space-related fields, but as the space economy continues to grow, these services will become in much more of a higher demand. So finding ways to market those capacities is critically important moving forward. It's pretty much just answering that question: how are we unique? What do we excel at? How do we pitch that to everyone else? So our vision, and this is just kind of after a couple of years of doing this, talking to thousands of people, the research we've done, this is kind of how we see things moving forward, and what we would like to see for the state. It's not us wanting to enact this, word for word. It's just our template for what we think the community is looking for. So one of the things is new resources, incubators or accelerators that specialize in space ventures is a conversation that has come up a number of times. Finding ways to better harmonize available financial resources with the companies and the startups that need them. A legal and administrative hub is one of the things that we found in our needs assessment, especially startups struggle with legal and administrative overhead. There's only so many people working. Most of them are usually like core mission focused. They're there for a specialty. They're an engineer or a coder or something. And so those companies often struggle with the capacity for legal, administrative, I'll tack on this, legislative outreach questions. So finding a hub that those companies that don't have that internal capacity can access would definitely help them grow in the future. We need to get better at amplifying existing state level resources. There's a lot of great programs through Empire State Development that a lot of New York space companies aren't aware of, or maybe you're not taking advantage of. So finding ways to better market existing resources is probably one of the lowest hanging fruits out there. And then this is something we've discussed repeatedly that we're going to be making some more significant moves on heading into this summer, is a job board or a career fair to directly connect the specific companies that are looking to hire specific talent with the students that are graduating from New York institutions, and developing a format that facilitates that direct connection between those two parties to see if we can't clarify and facilitate that growth pipeline from academia directly into the private sector, so students don't leave and so companies are getting the talent that they need. Another thing is the needs assessment. I won't dig into this too much, but phase 2 completes this summer. White paper and analysis will be forthcoming. We hope that's useful to all of the stakeholders. It'll shape a lot of our vision and programming internally moving forward. And then that series of assessments that we want to run afterwards will be significant. So we're very much looking forward to that. Events and connectivity. This is something we've been ramping up significantly in recent years. Evan touched on some of the major events. Quadri has been critically helpful in facilitating a lot of the happy hours and some of these other event-based connections down in the city. We're hoping to keep increasing that pace. So looking into next year, Yuri's Night is something that a lot of different organizations and a lot of different corners have talked about doing more with. We know that there's a lot of great groups that already do fantastic Yuri's Night programming in the state. We just would like to make it more of a statewide kind of conscious celebration in some way. We've already started talking about Space Week 2026. This is effectively at this point just kind of a year-long process. We'll take the next couple of weeks. We'll do feedback, insights, what worked, what didn't work, and then sometime in the middle of this summer, we will start looking at next year's program. So we've already chatted with some of you about events that should be held and things like that. All of you should just go ahead and keep this in your mind, because we're going to run this back every single year, just making it bigger and better every single time. A big thing, and this is something that Quadri is going to focus on a lot, is the need for the recurring semi-formal, less intensive, less necessarily guided or directed, broader mixing events. That's something that's been requested a lot. Everyone loves panels. Tuesday was absolutely fantastic. Space Week is a huge success, but people like the recurring once a month, every 2 weeks. There's going to be a gathering with space folks here, relax for a little while, mix and mingle, interact with some new folks, have some creative conversations. Maybe someone does, a little presentation for 15 minutes, you mix and mingle. That's the event. That type of semi-formal mixture with lots of different components and corners of the space ecosystem is something that's definitely been requested. So we're looking to spin that up, as well as more unique events, finding any which way to get people together and innovating together, with a specific focus, the next one here, on the finance sector. Figuring out how to deepen those connections, formalize those connections, is a big priority for us. Same with the civic sector. One of the key takeaways from our earlier conversation with the planetariums is their ability to serve as networking hubs in their local communities and bringing people together. So finding more of those formats, especially outside of New York City, where different corners of these regional space ecosystems can interact. And then last but not least is involving and building awareness with partners in state and local government. We've had a lot of success going on that. We had a policy briefing earlier The full video will be online. We discussed in a lot more detail some of the legislative efforts. There is a lot more new momentum in that area. We're very excited about that. We think that speaks to a lot of the growing interest and awareness in networking that's happening within the space ecosystem. But growing that awareness to more members of the legislature, and then also with local, regional economic development councils and local leaders is kind of a long-term priority for us as well. So what's next? This is pretty much it, and then I stop talking soon. So just kind of more broadly, what are we doing? What will we be doing moving forward? Is finding new partners and making those new connections. This week was huge. We've met a lot of new people, new friends that we're going to follow up with. New events will spin out of that. That process never really ends. The research continues as well. The needs assessment spins off so many more questions that we had asked in the first place for any follow-up. So new events and targeting in on those key needs just kind of increases that networking, that coordination among stakeholders. And then Space Week 2026, like we said, is going to be bigger and better than before. Upcoming events on the calendar for folks to be aware of. If you have any questions, reach out to Evan or I individually, or just ping info@empirespace.org. Tomorrow night's the closing townhouse party at Ivan's. We're going to celebrate the amazing week that we've had, bring everyone together just for one final hurrah while we're all here. Space Capital Summit is on May 12th. New York Tech Week is coming up the first week of June. EO Summit is the week after that. We will be spinning up monthly Empire Space events, so keep in touch, keep an eye out. If you have ideas for events, you know someone, hey, me and my friends from this company, we want to do a forum, reach out to us. We love event ideas. We'll always run everything up the flagpole to see how we can make it work. The bigger ticket items like the career fair and stuff, if you are interested in that, let us know. If you're either a company or an academic institution who thinks that kind of forum would be beneficial to you, let us know. And we can involve you in the discussion process on that. And then again, Space Week New York 2026, we'll make another pitch on that. We would not be anywhere without our partners. Some of them were discussed before, but we do want to give just a final shout out to these organizations. The NASA New York Space Grant Consortium for sponsoring our in-person day of forum programming on Tuesday. We literally would not have been there without them. They do a lot of really fantastic work in the state, and we're honored to be an affiliate with them. The Luxembourg Trade and Investment Office and the Luxembourg American Chamber of Commerce, along with the staff at the Luxembourg House. It was a fantastic way to kick off the week. We always enjoy that event because it's a reminder of the international connectivity that we have here in New York and those kind of partnerships and those kind of markets that we can tap into, which is another unique resource that we have here in New York that no other state does really. So we're honored to continue to participate with them. They were one of our first partners years ago, and it's been a pleasure ever since. SSPYs had an event this morning. They've always been fantastic partners. If you're not familiar with them, we always encourage folks to check them out. They host the New York Space Business Roundtable on a monthly basis. If you haven't visited that, we encourage you to look into that as well. Axiom Space for holding the event last night. It's always great to involve new partners in new places, bring in some new communities. So this week would not have been possible without all of these different organizations. So we just wanted to say one final thank you to all of them. And I think, is that it, Evan?
They were having one. Sorry.
Nah, you're good. Don't worry, man. So this is just kind of get involved, some action items for you listening. We do have a Slack channel. We have a New York Space Slack channel where that was determined to be the platform that had the greatest ease of access. It's asynchronous. So there is a community there. We're always looking to grow that and build some more interactivity with that. So if you're interested in joining the New York Space Slack channel, just let us know. empirespace.org/get involved, calendar, NASA ambassador database, social media database. So there's different ways that you can find things to do there. Find events near you. There are definitely space related events happening nearby on a regular basis, planetariums, other kinds of groups, engage with those communities. If you're interested in signing up for our newsletter, we published one earlier this year. We were very proud of it. We will hopefully be spinning one up on a quarterly basis moving forward. So we'll do one actually in the next couple of weeks to kind of summarize Space Week and how that all went. So if you're interested in signing up for the newsletter, just ping us at info@empirespace.org. And then advocate. We think it's important, especially for stakeholders. And this was something that we covered earlier in the policy briefing, but it's worth reiterating here. For companies, especially the startups, to find partners or to find a way to introduce yourselves to your local and state representatives. Say, hello, here's who we are. Here's the team that we've built. Here's the work that we do in the space economy in our little corner of New York. Here's the impact it has. Here's the benefit it's going to have, the role it plays in, the broader space, economy. How can, how can we connect with you? Are there resources we should be taking advantage of? Are there events that we should be attending? How can we deepen this relationship? So it's always good for companies to be assertive in advocating for themselves and building those connections. Because as someone who comes from a legislative background, they're elected to serve their constituents. And the companies and the businesses that operate in their district are their constituents. So just introduce yourself, say, hello, I'm one of your constituent companies. We do a lot of great work here. We would love to keep doing this great work here, grow what we're doing here. How can we do that? So that's ways that people can, build up that agency and actively get involved in growing the space ecosystem here. With that, I am done talking. That is the formal part of our presentation. So again, questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Our email is always open. People are always free to reach out. At this point, we would be happy to take any questions. I know some have been coming up in the chat. I think Evan has been touching on those while I've been going along. People have questions based on this presentation, any of the events from earlier this week. If people had a question that, on the forum day and didn't get to ask it and wanted to bring something up, comments, thoughts, anything, now is the time. Please feel free to chime in, either put something in the chat or just raise your hand.
I'll just speak to the question I answered in the chat for those not monitoring it, and also I guess give an opportunity for people to think about questions. Mark asked about resources for those that are just at the start of creating a space company. I assume this means in New York, or at least I did when I was answering this question. So I guess two things that I responded to Mark with. One is a report that Pat wrote on some of the key ESD resources for companies in New York that a space company could leverage. So I recommend that those in a similar position to Mark check out that article. It has some really good resources available in New York. And then for us to plug the census again, if you're looking for key partners, people to finance your business, etc., check out empirespace.org/data. We have different sections for private companies that you could partner with, or for investors under the section of business capital, accelerators and incubators under business services. So there's a lot of super valuable organizations and resources in the census that a business like Mark's could use. At this point, we're also relatively well connected within the census. So if there's someone you would like an introduction to or would like to know more about, please just reach out. We're happy to help.
I would just echo real quick on Evan's point. We're always, thanks for coming, David. We're always happy to provide one-on-one, consultations. Evan and I are always happy to schedule, a half-an-hour Zoom meeting, during the week. You're a new company, you're trying to grow, you're running into barriers. Send us an email. Please send us an email. Say, hi, I'm so-and-so from X company. We've run into this challenge. Is there anything, you can do to help us navigate it? We can set up a meeting. We can learn more about you and your mission and your vision and what you're trying to do and how we can assist. So always feel free to reach out to us.
I know Steve wrote a few things in the chat. I'm not sure if you had a question in there, Steve. If you do, feel free to chime in.
He referenced the main spaceport complex, which is really cool.
All right. We're done. All right. Any other questions from anyone? Thanks for listening to us for so long, but we're happy to have a conversation with anyone that has a curiosity or a question.
Hi, folks. Am I coming through now?
Yes, there you are, Steve.
Yeah, sorry about that. My headset wasn't working for some reason.
I knew we knew you were there.
Cheers. So I was just mentioning that Main Space has an annual conference typically in the fall, and I definitely highly recommend that. Getting a good sense of what's going on, in our near neighbor over there. Evan, you mentioned ESD, and for anyone who might not be familiar, that's Empire State Development Corp. And my comment was kind of along the lines of creating a quasi government corp like Maine did, but possibly oriented towards direct mining of resources on the moon, right? If it's open, there's nothing saying that New York State couldn't create an entity designed for that as a way to really pull together, based on a lot of the work that you all are doing, all the various disparate aspects of the industry in a unified effort.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. You triggered like 3 avenues of follow-up in my brain simultaneously, and I was trying to sort through which one I want to follow up on.
Don't you love that? I love that.
Yeah. So the first example, for those on the call who might not be familiar, Maine, obviously the state, much smaller economy, space economy than New York, but they have a spaceport complex that is under development, and they have customers who are planning on launching, to polar orbit from coastal Maine at some point in the next couple of years. State government has been very supportive. They've created official, a branch of state government that operates, not branch, department that operates and focuses on this area. They've invested in facilities, invested in resources. So the example there is if a small, more northerly state than New York, like Maine, can invest in these things and achieve growth in these things, then New York can do the same. And Steve, another thought that brought up, because your comment made me think of the conversation we had earlier with Michael Castle-Miller from the Lunar Development Cooperative, and how states, might be able to invest or play a role in some of these upcoming ventures. And I think the thing from New York is, especially from a state government in an official capacity, not saying that that's not possible, but I think there's a number of conversations that need to occur within the legislature first, because this is not a legislature historically been super involved in space and aerospace. There have been individual efforts in bills, but unlike a legislature like Colorado or Virginia, or definitely like Florida or Texas, that legislates on space and aerospace issues multiple times a year, and the average member has great fluency on those issues. That dynamic has yet to take place in New York. It is growing, and we're working on that. A lot of the offices that we've met with, we're surprised by the level of awareness that they have. We've come across some Trekkies, which was always really cool. When we were in the legislative office and they're holding a Star Trek mug, so we're like, okay, this conversation's going to go well. But that's why it's so important, because to hit those big ticket items, those larger capacity building measures, requires active involvement from state government. So I want to thank you for giving us a chance to dig into those.
And thank you guys. Absolutely.
Mark, I would recommend, we haven't posted it online yet, but the space law panel from Tuesday's conversation might be really interesting to you about law or government issue about space mining and interplanetary communications. Long story short, most space law doesn't exist yet, which is kind of the dynamic that a lot of companies and governments are finding themselves in. Most space law is based on treaties written in the 1960s that have not been updated. And a lot of the question is, what does that, interplanetary legal framework look like? and what trends are going to inform the development of those legal norms. We had a really interesting conversation with Michael Kasson-Miller from the Lunar Development Cooperative. Mark, you might be interested in that. And one of the things that's kind of offhand that he mentioned is there's a lot of quirks to how legal norms develop. And he mentioned that, one of the reasons that New York law might be one of the unique specialties that we are able to offer, to the broader space economy on a global scale is existing tradition. A lot of international disputes will be resolved according to New York law because that's the jurisdiction where a lot of those cases happen to be brought. So there's a lot of really interesting legal questions. There are very few legal certainties, depending on which nation you're operating from, what you're planning on doing. Mining especially is very tricky because the Outer Space Treaty, to which most nations are signatories, says that you're not allowed to own resources in space. And so then you get into legal technicalities of, if you take this rock and possess it and refine it and turn it into something else, does that qualify as owning it? I'm not a lawyer. But yeah, there's a lot of really interesting legal questions surrounding how this is all going to play out. And New York is likely to be at the center of some of those conversations. Thank you, Angel and Elisha, for the comments. Thank you for joining us. We are not formally affiliated with the American Institute for Aeronautics and Astronautics. We are aware of them, but we are not formally introduced to them. Yes, we will send around the slide deck. This slide deck will be made available to everyone who RSVP'd, so that they have it to be able to review and use. A lot of these links are interactive, so to be able to actually dig into the resources that we provided. So yes, we will send around the slide deck.
I have a question back to
Yes.
Donnie, if he has audio, or you can just write in the chat, I guess. Is there a reason why you asked about the affiliation with AIAA, or any thoughts on Empire Space affiliate?
Hey, good evening. Thank you for replying back to me. Yeah, I was at their event last night in DC, and they're very well connected with NASA, private capital. So there's a lot of resources there, and they have a lot of outreach to academic institutions and centers throughout the country. So it just so happens that it ties in. I was at their gala event dinner last night, and I just saw a lot of opportunity to network.
1 second, Liz. We'll get right to you.
It's about that.
Oh, go ahead and jump in, Liz.
Yeah. So, hi, at Teachers in Space, we've had a long relationship with AIAA, and I have just joined, starting today, Technology Advisory Committee for them. So we are working with them. If nobody else is, you have us. We've also worked at the main spaceport and been involved in strategic planning efforts in New Mexico. So I'm really excited to find out what you guys are working on, because I would love to do these things in New York instead of always in other states.
We would like that too.
Cool.
Thank you for chiming in, Liz. It's always great. For anyone who isn't familiar with Teachers in Space, please go check out their website. Liz is a fantastic contact. She joined one of our panels on Tuesday. So thank you again, Liz, for chiming in.
Sure.
Any other questions from the group? I see some more thank yous. Angel, we agree. We are best positioned, especially in the international dynamic. I mean, being home to the United Nations, there is an international character to New York that other states just simply don't have. So finding ways to best leverage that in conjunction with our domestic space economy is a key question for us moving forward. All right, I don't see any raised hands. Evan, do you see any raised hands?
Nothing in the chat.
All right, cool. All right.
Right.
Do you want to do a final thank you, or here?
Yeah.
I'll do a final thank you, and then I'll pass it over to you.
Perfect.
So, as this is the last, public event of Space Week, for those of us that are still here with us, we just wanted to express our deepest thank you and appreciation for your participation and support for this week's events. As I said before, this week isn't about us. This wasn't a week of us pitching Empire Space or our product or our, XYZ. This week was about all of you, the stakeholders who participated, who joined, who are doing the work every day. We don't exist without you and your contributions. So it's been a phenomenal week. Met a lot of new friends, deepened relationships with old friends and partners, new ideas for the future. It's really, really an exciting time to be talking about space in New York. There's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of excitement. There's challenges too, but there's nothing that we can't, nothing that's otherworldly that we're going to be unable to surmount. It's questions of, resources and programming and things like that. And we'll answer those questions. We will be able to achieve this future. I've never been more convinced that we are going to be able to make New York a top 10 space week than I was after this week. Every event was maxed out in terms of participation, the enthusiasm, the interest, seeing some of the conversations on the side, people from different, spheres who had never met each other, having an interesting thought that led to another interesting thought is exactly why we were all here. So it was an honor and a privilege to be able to host all of you, to foster this engagement and this networking on an issue that we care so very deeply about. And we hope to see you all again very soon.
Thanks, Pat. I'll just add, obviously, agree with everything you said. A huge thank you to those that came today, to those that have been a part of Space Week for this whole week. I think the only other thing to say is that, we at Empire Space are very proud of what Space Week 2025 showed, how much of the community came out, how engaged everyone was. And we think that everyone in this community should be proud of what we showed that we could do. So this was a week of many things, but it was also a week of recognizing what's here, what we're capable of, each other. So this was I think, a big week for the New York space community.
Agree, Evan. Thank you all again very much for joining us. For those that are signed up for Ivan's tomorrow night, we will see you there.